welcome back to my channel, all my haunted followers. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe at the bottom and share my stories. Here are 5 UFO encounters. With everything that's going on in the news, it begs the question, are we getting closer? Closer to the answer that we all seek. Do aliens exist? Well, while we wait for that answer, sit back and prepare to get scared. I am a firm believer in things that we cannot explain. I also believe that we need some type of explanation as well. However, sometimes things defy explanation. With everything that is going on in the news, I really wanted to share my personal experience. Now, I can't remember everything as this happened to me when I was about 10 years old, but I will do my best. Back in the 60s, UFO talk wasn't really a thing. Of course, TV shows and stuff would make them out to be these flying saucers and men from Mars. My dad was a very firm man and didn't believe anything that he could not see. Rest his soul. My dad was a very outdoors type guy. We moved to Virginia when I was 10 as my dad wanted to make a different career. We purchased a small cabin. Having lived in the city, I was nervous, but excited. My little brother and me fell in love with the place. We would spend hours outside building forts and just enjoying the outdoors. We would play until the sun went down, and my mom would call us in for dinner. But that night, we begged to camp out in the backyard. My mom agreed, so my dad set up a tent for us, gave us some crackers and everything to make s'mores. We made a little fire and ended up just enjoying the night. Now, I don't know what time it was. Back then, I would get tired around 10 o'clock, and that's when I would go to bed. That was in the days of no cell phones. We both snuggled up into our sleeping bags and passed out. All of a sudden, I woke up having to use a bathroom. I remember hearing a faint buzzing sound. I can only explain this as like TV static. I ended up unzipping the tent, and I was shocked to see what I saw. Hovering over the house was this saucer-looking thing, just like in the movies. I really thought for a moment that I was sleeping. I rubbed my eyes, but it was still there. Thinking it was my dad just messing with us, I woke my brother, but he quickly dismissed it by saying how big it was. Just then, we started to yell for my parents. I think that's when the fear started really sinking in. Then, this thing just took off, straight up into the sky, within a matter of seconds. Of course, my dad and my mom didn't believe us, but if I remember one thing, it was that noise and how unearthly this thing looked. I always wondered what the thing was doing over our house and what it was there for. It took me weeks to get over that. But seeing everything on the news now, those memories started coming rushing back to me. I asked my mom about this a couple weeks ago. She is now in her early 90s, but is sharp and remembers everything. She recalls that my dad and her both had dreams of little green men standing in their rooms. And of course, my dad didn't believe it, thinking it was nothing more than a bad dream or something that had seen on the television. I still wonder to this day, was that an attempt for an alien abduction? And me and my brother both saved them. I know not many people will believe the story, but it is something I'd like to share. Now, I am no big believer in ghosts, Bigfoot, etc., and I still have a hard time believing what I saw. But here it goes. Back in 2020, I was working for a construction company. We had this project on the list to get finished within the duration of 5 months, so we were really busting our humps to get certain parts of the building done. Some would pull 12 to 14-hour shifts. Now, anyone who works construction, they give you a time frame from breaking ground to section of the building that needs to get done. Anyways, one night, I believe it was a Thursday, our foreman asked us if we could work a couple extra hours. Of course, this was not a voluntary thing. It had to be around 11 p.m. or so. We were finishing up welding a few certain sections of the building, getting everything in place. It was me, three other guys, and the boss man. The night was amazing clear out, and I kept looking up at the sky during breaking sessions and questioning my choices in life. I remember when I looked up, and I was looking at the stars, and you know how jets have those green lights on the wings? I saw what I thought it was just a jet, but then I saw another one, and another one, red and green lights. Then I noticed they all formed what looked like a triangle shape. I yelled to everyone to look up. We all watched this thing slowly move over us. I don't know how high it was or anything. It was definitely huge. I mean, huge. Given all the lights belonged to this one thing, it would have been 5 to 6 planes long, or maybe 3 football fields long. I know that sounds crazy, but this thing took up the entire sky almost. We watched as it glided over us and disappeared into the tree line. I will say, usually with lights on planes, they flash, don't they? Oh, this was just a steady green lights. Everyone, of course, just snuffed it out and went back to work. About that night, there were many people posting on Facebook reporting the same thing, one with a video. And of course, the story just died out. Hey, thanks for sharing this and keeping this stuff alive. I really want to know what I saw that night. I'm asking for a friend. I've been a pilot for 12 years now. I've worked for some well-known companies flying commercial, but I hung my hat up doing that, and now I just fly private for business. Every pilot has their fair share of odd occurrences in the air, mostly weird trouble with a plane, or sometimes weird storms. But this one story, I can never forget. Now, before one embarks on the story, I have flown almost 12 years commercial and spent 10 years in the Air Force before flat flying. So I have well over 13 hours under my belt. This happened to me on a flight home back in 2005. It was a normal flight from Boston to Orlando. Now, I have flown all sorts of planes, jets, and I know that planes are not capable of what I experienced that night and defies physics. It was a night flight. It was roughly 2,200 hours. My co-pilot had taken over for a moment, so I could use the head. Suddenly, over the headset, my co-pilot said that there was another plane at our 3 o'clock, almost hugging our right wing. I ran back to my seat and looked out the co-pilot's window. At first, I thought it was someone pointing one of those green lasers at the jet. Please don't ever do this. However, we were about 40,000 feet. I looked at the radar, and I didn't see anything. A number of thoughts ran through my head. The craft, I call it, was almost long, and it was glowing. It was traveling about our speed, 480 or so, but nothing was making sense. All of a sudden, our radio equipment all started acting up simultaneously. Then, to this day, although we haven't spoken in years, I'm sure both myself and my co-pilot will tell the same story and the same thing. Nothing we know can travel or hover the way that craft did. Thank you for sharing my story. UFO or not, that was one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me in my career. I hope this story doesn't make me sound crazy, but I really want to share my own, as not many believers in this stuff are in my line of work. I'd probably lose my job. Anyways, here it goes. This happened to me about 3 years ago. I was out of the academy as a new police officer. I had already applied for several towns and cities, but ended up getting picked up by a small town. Not something I really wanted, but it was a foot in the door. Now, this town is in the deep woods of Virginia. Sorry, I'm not giving up the name. I started out working nights. The shifts were 10 to 7. It was a hard adjustment for me, but I adapted over a course of a couple months or two. I actually started to love my department and the little boring town that I work for. That night, I started my patrol as I always did. I had one section, and another officer had another. I would just hit locations we usually had issues in, just making my presence known. It had to be around 1 o'clock or so. I was in my cruisers doing some paperwork. Dispatch rolled over the radio informing us both, myself and my coworker, of suspicious activity. One of the neighbors called in, saying that she had saw something hovering over her house. Now, we definitely had a population in our town that is well known for enjoying themselves, if you know what I mean. I really didn't think much of it. We had made our way to the residence. Upon arrival, a mother and her baby came running out and saying that she had seen something, a light, hovering over her house. I knew this woman, as she was a local nurse and not someone who could just, or would, make this up. So we both told her it would be fine and we would investigate. We walked around the area looking for, well, we didn't know. All of a sudden, my partner told me to look up, about 100 feet or so into the sky. That's when I saw what looked like, well, circles of lights just floating. At first, I thought it was like some type of balloon or something, but it started to drift in another direction. We kept watching it as it flew over us. Just as it did, the lights on the streets started flickering, and our radio started cutting out. I swear, I'm not making this up. It just floated over us and into the tree line. We gave chase as best as we could, but the further the woods it got into, the more we lost it. This thing had no sound, and when it was messing with the lights in our radios, it gave off this very staticky feeling. I remember looking down at my arm hair, and it was sticking up, almost like when you rub a balloon and you kind of put it over it. That's the best way to explain it. That night, both my partner and I had no idea how to write this thing up, so we wrote it up as unconfirmed. We let the homeowner know that whatever it was is gone. To this day, I don't know what I saw. I'm not going to tell anybody else about it. I don't want to be labeled as crazy and then again lose my job. But maybe I did see a UFO. The question is, what the heck was it doing? Before I tell this story, I have to say that I really don't care whether or not anyone believes me or not. I have nothing to gain or lose. It happened in the early 2007s with me and my son. We both avid fishers. My son at the time was leaving for boot camp, so we wanted to have one more son and father weekend together. It was a beautiful Saturday morning. We lived about 20 minutes from the lake that we fished. We set up our chairs, opened up the ice chest, and started drinking a few beers. It was an amazing afternoon of us and just enjoying each other's company and catching some dinner. As we started talking about boot camp and how excited he was, we both heard what I can only describe as a low hum. The sound grew to a point that we could actually feel it in our chests. I looked around but didn't see anything. We did our best to ignore it, but it also started to dawn on us how silent the air was getting. No birds. Nothing. My son Zach pointed out at the pond. I looked to the area that he was pointing at, and I noticed bubbles started to form on the surface, almost like something was coming up. As it did, the humming grew louder, to a point that we had to cover our ears. Then we noticed a light source coming from the pond. That's when this object surfaced. It looked like a triangle. It was very smooth looking, with no form of grates, or anything that tells us that it's a plane or something, or no landing gear. Nothing. It slowly rose up from the pond and just drifted slowly into the air. The best I could make out was under it was a glowing green light. Then it just took off. One moment it was there, and the next it was gone. Both in shock, we couldn't believe what we had just seen. In that moment, we both realized that we had this weird taste, almost like metallic, in our mouths. And our cell phones were both dead. This day, me and my son still speak about this. I did want to mention that weeks after that, that taste stayed in my mouth. I was too stubborn to go see a doctor, because it eventually went away. What did I see that day?
Well, my haunted followers, I always share everyone's stories, and very rarely do I get to share my own. But I really want to share my own on this one. I don't like to share stories because a lot of people like to pick apart certain things. I don't pick apart anybody's story. Everyone has their own view of what they saw. But for me, this is my own personal UFO story, really, something I can never explain. So this happened back in 2008. My cousin owns a huge farm, huge property. I don't know how many acres it is, but it's huge. So this was at night, and what we would do is we would go out to the field. We would park in a tree line, and we would just park and kind of hide in the tree line. Because what happens when people would sneak on the farm and steal vegetables, or they would take dirt bikes and they would ride around 4 wheels and ride around and mess the fields up. So we would hide in there, and obviously we saw somebody would chase him out. And people used to like to park near what he has, like a pond, and people go park out there, smoke, or do adult things. So again, we would park in the tree lines. It was around 12 o'clock at night, and it was a beautifully clear night. I love how every story is a beautifully clear night, but it kind of shares what, how visibility you have over the skyline. And from where we park, you can see the entire skyline, and it was beautiful how we were looking. And my cousin looked up and he said, "Dude, what is that?" And I looked up, and this gigantic, I can't explain it. It was 10 little yellow lights, white lights, all formed in a triangle shape, like one of the stories that one of the construction workers has shared. Looked just like a triangle shape, but this thing, from tree line to tree line, and the day after we went out there, we kind of figured out how long this was. Had to be somewhere around 100 feet, 100 to 150 feet in length. And we watched this thing kind of glide over us. We got out of the truck and we were listening. There was no sound to it. From how high it was compared to the ground level, you're probably thinking somewhere around 300 to 400 feet in the air, maybe more than that. But with any type of jet, helicopter, plane, there was no sound. And a lot of people chalk this up to a glider, but it's 12 o'clock at night, and it was a perfectly shaped triangle and these gigantic yellow lights. And we watched this thing again just glide over us, and it kind of banked itself to the right, and then it kind of just, like everyone says, it just started gliding over the tree lines, and it disappeared. So we got in the truck and we just took off down the street. We're trying to find this thing, and the crazy thing about this, it was just gone. And from the time we got out of the field to the street was no more than a minute, if that, and this thing was gone. So a lot of people share their UFO stories, and whether or not what I believe was this UFO, was extraterrestrial, was it aliens visiting the world, I'm not sure. Was it a government project? I'm really not sure what we saw, but I know for the fact that this thing was gigantic. It was absolutely massive, and no plane that I know that is shaped like a triangle. I mean, we do have triangular-shaped planes, but you would think that it would give off some type of sound. There was no sound to it at all. So just a kind of story that I want to share with everyone. Obviously, I want to do more of my own stories, because I share everyone's stories, but something I want to share for everyone. So thank you.
Well, all my haunted followers, thank you all for tuning in and listening to those stories. And having my own encounter, I really want to know what is out there. Is it the military, or is it actually aliens? And why are they here? What are they doing? And what's their plans for us? Next, I am looking for encounters with dogman and werewolves. If you have a story you would like to share, please do. I am also looking for a creepy encounter with Uber drivers. Please send those all to alexuni101@gmail.com. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe at the bottom. Happy hauntings.